serve this one up as Sega just pulling anything out of the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise. I mean, it's a fighting game with Sonic characters. Like, what were they thinking? So, Sonic the Fighters. I am reviewing it here on the Xbox Live Arcade. There's also a PSN port, which makes this game much more easily accessible. I think the last time it was released in the States was only on the Cube as an unlockable part of the Sonic Gems collection, I want to say. Beyond that, it was very, very rarely released as an arcade game here. So, check it out here. It's cheapest, but anyway. Simply put, this is a fighting game that is an example of what not to do with a fighting game. It's just not that good at all. Simple button mashing controls can win most fights. I mean, that's the key to any fighting video game. If you're just button mashing and you can win, it's not really giving you any strategy or any semblance of realism for your fight. I mean, you're just mashing one or two buttons and you're just kicking ass that way. That being said, there are only 3 buttons. So there's a punch button, a kick button, and a block button. We'll get to that block later. But I mean, if you just punch, 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 kick, 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 whatever, you're going to do combos, you're going to do special moves, and it just leads to characters being really cheap. I have found Fang, the weasel wolf thing, to be really, really cheap with his stupid godforsaken gun. And he can just shoot you over and over, and it's cheap, and it's not really fun. It makes the game not nearly as cool. Something I did like about the game, the blocking system uses these barriers, and so you have the barriers themselves are kind of like the item from Sonic the Hedgehog that protects you from a hit. So you can use them, but you only have so many blocks to actually use before you run out, and then once you run out in that fight, you have no more blocks, so you can't block anything. So it's a really neat system. I mean, you can block for a long time, and then afterwards, you gotta fight. Kind of makes turtling, not an option, which is kind of strange given the game's lack of depth. And the lack of depth is the thing that doesn't make any sense about this. I mean, this game was made by Sega AM2. These are the guys that made the Virtua Fighter series, and this game came out well after Virtua Fighter was made on literally the same hardware. So I don't see how it didn't work. I mean, you have the same guys. I just don't know why they didn't incorporate the exact same thing. I do give bonus points to the game for a varied cast. It pulls from a lot of random Sonic and Sega games. Yeah, you've got Sonic and Knuckles, Tails, Eggman, all those people, but you also have Fang I mentioned earlier is from Sonic Triple Trouble on the Game Gear, and then you have Bean the Duck or something from the Dynamite Ducks game, which is just another random character to throw in there. Beyond that, this specific version on the Xbox Live Arcade and PSN features Honey the Cat as a fully playable character. It's only in this version, and before the character was just kind of a glitch version of another character that was kind of accessible but not fully fleshed out. But it's kind of neat they actually put her in this game, so there you go. Props to that. Like any good fighting game, multiplayer is essential to keeping the game alive. And like any fighting game that features crappy gameplay, with crappy gameplay leads to crappy multiplayer. So playing with someone else doesn't make it any better to deal with. I mean, the game is blocky and boring and just not that fun, so playing with a friend, you'll probably laugh and have a good time for a few minutes, but you won't play too long. The inclusion of online multiplayer is an absolute joke. This is way more than the game deserves. I mean, there's player matches and ranked matches. I don't know who in their mind would actually want to rank themselves in the game, let alone spend that much time saying, yes, I'm the #1 world player in Sonic the Fighters. But hey, you know what? It's there. For all I know, it's still up right now. That being said, when I actually did play the game here, I actually did get an online match, and the guy was pretty good. So, I mean, it was the easiest way to play the game and enjoy it, because otherwise, just playing the arcade mode, it's pretty easy. The fact that it's there shows me that they tried hard, but it's not worth trying when the game doesn't really deserve it. As I mentioned before, the visuals are kind of blocky. I mean, for its time, it was fine, I guess, but now they don't hold up so well. You can see it's just not as good as other games. On the plus side, there are plenty of colors they use for the characters. The backgrounds are really varied and pulled from lots of Sonic the Hedgehog game environments, and everything runs pretty smoothly. I mean, for a fighting game, if it's jittery and buggy, it's not going to be fun, but this game actually does handle that pretty well, and it is 3D, which is relatively new for that time, so they're kind of handling the kinks on that. But it's when the gameplay isn't there, it just makes everything else not that great. Beyond that, it's just comical to see these characters fighting in a ring, all Virtua Fighter-like. I mean, you've got Sonic the Hedgehog just literally using his fists and spin dash to beat up Tails. I mean, this is a player's fantasy for a long time. For that reason alone, you might really enjoy this game. You can really duke it out with anybody you want and just beat the crap out of them over and over again. Poor gameplay, cheap characters, no real sense of any fun multiplayer. You would think the game is just totally not worth it at all, but I would recommend playing it just because it's this fun diversion in the Sonic franchise. It's also pretty cheap if you buy it on PSN or Xbox Live, so you don't have to spend much to actually experience it, and it's kind of cool. I mean, if you see it for what it is, a Sonic fighting game, that's kind of neat. Everything I said here is all leading up to this one big thing. I really want to see a sequel to the game. If they make it good and they actually bring in a team that can handle a fighting game, this would be pretty fun. It's not going to be Super Smash Brothers related. I mean, they could make it like that, but I think there's enough characters here to make the game fun and varied, and they could easily make it a fun fighting game that would cater towards the Sonic the Hedgehog fan base. I don't know if Sega wants to deteriorate that image of Sonic any more than it already has and probably continue to do. You can't go wrong here. Make the game, do complete fan service, it could be great. So long as I can do more than 2 or 3 moves per character, I am holding out for a sequel. Come on, Sega, give me Sonic the Fighters 2.